Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Fort, and we're here for a poetry discussion that will take place in 3 separate playlists here on the channel. The number 1 playlist being, of course, the poetry discussion playlist, which is quickly approaching 100 poetry discussions. Second is the National Poetry Month 2021 playlist. I am doing a poetry discussion every day of the month in April 2021 to celebrate National Poetry Month. So I think there should be more poetry on YouTube. I think there should be more poetry in the world. And this is my own little way of trying to contribute to that phenomenon or lack thereof. Number 3, the third playlist in which this poetry discussion will exist is the What Matters Most is How Well You Walk Through the Fire playlist. I am hoping to do a poetry discussion for each of the poems in this collection, but also eventually I'm probably going to have a Charles Bukowski playlist, a playlist of all the Charles Bukowski that I've talked about on this channel, getting to be an extensive amount now. But the poem in question happens on page 17. It is the first poem in the collection, titled My Father and the Bum. But it takes place chapter 1, if it's such a thing in poetry collections, Blue Beads and Bones, My Father and the Bum. The poem itself reads as such. My father believed in work. He was proud to have a job. Sometimes he didn't have a job, and then he was very ashamed. He'd be so ashamed that he'd leave the house in the morning and then come back in the evening so the neighbors wouldn't know. Me? I liked the man next door. He just sat in a chair in his backyard and threw darts at some circles he had painted on the side of his garage in Los Angeles in 1930. He had a wisdom that Goethe, Hegel, Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, Freud, Jaspers, Heidegger, and Toynbee would find hard to deny. What is being said here, if not that our speaker, if not Chinaski himself, if not Charles Bukowski himself? This seems to be perhaps a poem based on real life experience. Our speaker, at the very least, has ideological differences with his father. This plays a role through much Bukowski poetry. There is a lot of consternation surrounding the father figure in Bukowski's poetry. It seems there's a lot of consternation around authority in the personality of Bukowski, in the ambiance of Bukowski, in the mythos of Bukowski, in the canon. The very canon of Bukowski is an argument against authority. We have here that the authority represents hard work. Hard work. Now, there seems to be 2 different types of hard work. I'm not one of the whole alpha male, beta male type people, but I do believe in personality types. And I think that there are alpha type personalities, there are beta type personalities, and there are sigma type personalities as well. Bukowski falls into this sigma type personality. Basically, what is a sigma type personality? A sigma type personality is an alpha type personality, but don't tell them what they are. Basically, that's it. A sigma type personality is an individual who is hardworking, industrious, hardworking in their own way, industrious on their own accord, because they do not accept authority in the way that an alpha type does accept authority, does recognize, perhaps is the better term. An alpha type does recognize authority, strives to become the authority. The sigma type personality says, fuck your authority. I am the authority. and I don't have to earn it. This poem, I think, so another, Sigmas don't like authority. That is what I'm basically getting at here. And here we have Bukowski saying, the authority figure which is supposed to be accepted first and foremost by a young man, is the father figure. Didn't like my dad. What does my dad represent? What did my father represent? My father represented work and shame. Here in this poem, my father believed in work. He was proud to have a job. Sometimes he didn't have a job and he was very ashamed. He'd be so ashamed that he'd leave the house in the morning and then come back in the evening so the neighbors wouldn't know. Here we have the speaker recognizing the father's shame at something in which he's just playing a beta role anyway. So what does it matter that the neighbors know you don't have a job? It's the 1930s, they don't have jobs either, dickhead. What the speaker's doing by saying me, well, I liked the neighbor, is accomplishing two things. One, it is disavowing the father as the authority. Disavowing the father as the authority. Number two, it is setting on fire. What matters most is how well you walk through the fire. We're setting on fire the authority's idea of the authority's idea of the hierarchy. The authority figure here, the father figure here, is accepting standard societal norms as authority. My authority says that the norms are the authority. So I'm bypassing my authority, going to the neighbor who does not accept these authorities. The speaker here seems to contrast hard work from philosophy. The neighbor, well, he had a sort of wisdom that Nietzsche would have admired, couldn't deny in the very least. That Goethe, that Kierkegaard would have said, okay, I know where you're going. That Freud would have appreciated, would have seen and said, yeah, okay. These are the people that would have appreciated the neighbor fella instead of my father fella. I don't care for my father. We are having a disavowment. A disavowment, is that a word? The speaker is disavowing the entire collective of ideals from his father. Hard work. I like the neighbor guy who sits in his porch. And shame. Shame. Disavowing shame through accepting philosophers' wisdom, which is a wisdom. Freud maybe talked a little bit about shame, but the existentialists, a lot of this existentialism being mentioned here, you're not talking about shame. And then we are disavowing the hierarchy, the set of values, the meta values of the father figure, disavowing the meta values of the father figure by bypassing him altogether and accepting the neighbor, the person to whom our father figure wants to be admired, by accepting that individual as the authority. Because, well, hey, you must too. If you're looking for the neighbor's approval, why am I looking for your approval? Why don't I just look for the neighbor's approval? Something interesting about that, though, about this poem in general. Bukowski seems so deeply affected, so deeply disaffected by his father, that the reason he's doing all this is because his father would hate it. What we're doing is we're starting with the end in mind. What would Pops what would disgust pops? Okay, we'll start there and we'll reason backwards into what we're doing. It is a reverse engineering of position. It is a reverse engineering of philosophy. It is a reverse engineering of life goals. Because my father values work so much, fuck it. Because my father values work so much, I do not. Because my father values perception so much, I'm not going to. What type of person doesn't value perception? The Sigma type personality, but oftentimes the shameless, we see a certain type of person is shameless, a bum. Which takes us back to the title, My Father and the Bum. It is very tempting, if this is not your first Bukowski poem, if you've read volumes of Bukowski before, is very tempting to see that title and imagine Bukowski's father and Bukowski. Bukowski's father, my father, and the bum, Bukowski. It is very tempting to imagine that things are going to play out that way in the poem when the rug is pulled out from under us and the bum we're being led to believe is the neighbor. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. The bum referenced in the title, I don't care how much Bukowski is selling us on the neighbor being the bum. Bukowski is the bum. He's reclaiming the title. He's saying, no, this is mine. I'm the bum. Because you thought that being a bum was the worst thing you could be. So that's going to be me. I'm going to accept that. That is all I have for this poetry discussion. One that was very fun to chew on for me. I love seeing that type of bitter and spite, that type of hatred, that type of pricktitude popping up in poetry. It's something that always makes me smile. So I hope to see you tomorrow for another poetry discussion, but I also hope to see you throughout the month for all of the poetry discussions I'll be doing. I hope to see you, what was I going to say? For the rest of the poems in this poetry discussion series, for What Matters Most is How Well You Walk Through the Fire, but I also hope to see you on my Poetry Discussions playlist. This is a playlist in which what I really do is I try to chew on one thing from a poem rather than go through everything in the poem. I'm not doing a full review in these videos. I really just sort of pick one thing and chew on it. But I hope to see you as well on my personal channel, a link to which can be found in the description below.